All right, here we are on a Wednesday night, everybody. Thanks so much for those of you who are just joining. We're going to do another stream and talk about Tropical Storm Erin, which is getting better organized tonight out in the central Atlantic. We're also going to talk about a new area of development out towards the Yucatan Peninsula and, of course, the showers and thunderstorms that are blossoming in the Midwest. Another night of strong to severe thunderstorms. We got a break yesterday on Tuesday. However, Monday was busy, over the weekend was busy, and now we have more severe weather. Slight risk day today, another slight risk day tomorrow. So we'll talk about all of those things. And as some of you are just joining and tuning in, please feel free to drop in the comments where you're watching from, say hello, and let me know how your night's going here on your Wednesday evening. Halfway through the work week, this week seems like it is kind of flying by. Quick week. Tonight is Wednesday, or is today Thursday? No, it is Wednesday. So happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope you're doing well tonight. Thanks for tuning in, for watching the stream, and all of your support, just like we normally do and have been doing the past couple of nights. We'll wait just a few seconds here for everybody to jump on, give those of you a chance who are scrolling through and seeing this, the opportunity to get everything set up so you can enjoy the broadcast and get some info, hopefully learn something new, or just kind of figure out what the forecast is with Erin, which all of us want to know. So again, we'll get started here in just a second. We're going to be talking about what's happening with Erin out in the Atlantic, Tropical Storm Erin, new area of tropical development out towards the Yucatan Peninsula, and then some severe weather in the Midwest. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into it. So big picture shows you what's happening out in the Atlantic. And you can see, just like the past couple of nights, most of the Atlantic basin is fairly quiet. However, we do have Tropical Storm Erin, and it looks a lot better organized tonight than it did last night at this time. We're seeing much more in the way of taller thunderstorm tops, convection that has been developing towards the center of Erin. And part of the reason why, and mainly why we're seeing more of an intensification trend here, is Erin is running into some warmer sea surface temperatures, and so that's helping with some of the development. Still not looking at a rapidly intensifying system, but gradual strengthening here through the day today into tomorrow, and likely through the weekend as well, as we do eventually start to get near hurricane status. So big picture Atlantic basin, fairly quiet aside from Erin and then one or two more tropical waves that are rolling off the coast of Africa. Things have finally quieted down in the Cabo Verde Islands, where they got a lot of heavy rainfall from Erin. Now, Erin is marching westward, and you can see we do have some potential land interaction here as we get towards this weekend. There's still a strong signature for a recurvature out to sea, but there's been a little bit of fluctuation, that windshield wiper type effect in some of the data and the computer models today, which we expected, right? Our trends are when we see some of those shifts long-term, model run after model run. In the meantime, we use the ensemble members to kind of help us look at the forecast between each of those individual or deterministic runs. So there's Erin out in our tropical Atlantic here, the main development region, heading towards the west. And the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center has Erin with winds that are slightly higher than last night at this time. So again, a little bit of strengthening. I think it looks much better on the satellite than it did last night at this time. Maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. And look at the big difference here. Maybe not the big difference, but some difference in the speed with Erin. Moving to the west at 17 miles per hour. Last night at this time, we had a storm that was moving west at about 20 miles per hour, so it slowed down. So probably two reasons why we're seeing a little bit more of a boost in the strengthening, warmer sea surface temperatures, and then also the system slowing down a little bit. That gives it a better opportunity to organize a tiny bit more. So there's the stats. Sustained winds of 50, moving west at 17 miles per hour. This is as of the 5 p.m. advisory from the Hurricane Center. We're waiting on the 11 p.m. advisory to come in. I think once it comes in, we'll probably see maybe another small boost in the maximum sustained winds at the center and around the center. and then also possibly a small shift in the cone, but not really thinking there's going to be any huge adjustments in the track. And speaking of the track, here it is again from the 5 p.m. advisory from the Hurricane Center. Shows Erin staying a tropical storm, first of all, for about another 24 hours or less. And then once we get into Friday, notice the H there. That represents the Hurricane Center's forecast of an increase from tropical storm to hurricane by early Friday morning. After that, we maintain hurricane status, probably Cat 1, low-end Category 2 through Saturday. And then it looks like by Sunday, as the system starts to jot up to the north, we get up to major hurricane status. That is a Category 3 or above. Will probably just be straddling major hurricane status. The cone itself continues Erin's jog to the west here for another, let's say, 12 hours or so, and then we'll start to likely see a little bit of a shift to the north-northwest before we expect that curvature out to sea. Still expecting a right-hand turn out to sea. At least that's the way things look right now, before any major impacts to the east coast of the U.S. But there's still a little bit of room for error, and some of the windshield wiper effect of the computer models through the day today has sort of driven home that fact that we can't still completely, even tonight, rule out the potential of some impacts along the east coast of the U.S., but overall, still better odds, better probabilities of Erin turning out to sea, making a right-hand turn, and not making landfall, at least in the U.S. Want to get a little bit tighter of a view here of Erin on the satellite, and this is what I mean when I say it looks slightly better organized. So first of all, you can pretty easily identify where the center is. Last night at this time, we had a lot of the thunderstorm activity that was shunted to the west side of Erin's center. Now it's sort of balanced out a little bit more, and not a ton in the way of wobbles north or south. Looks like it's still heading pretty much due westward, and some pretty tall thunderstorm development here tonight. Convection towards the center of Erin, and then some of those spiraling bands as well, especially on the north side of Erin here tonight. So that's how things look in terms of the track and the current presentation. A better organized storm. Winds have picked up a little bit, and then the system itself has slowed down just a tiny bit more. I want to show you something a little different than I showed you last night, and this is a look at the super ensemble members. So what is that? Well, essentially we're taking a couple of different ensemble members, and remember, what are those ensemble members? It's basically just a group of different ideas of what could happen based on different environmental conditions or computer models that spit out a different solution here. And so we're taking the ensemble members. The past couple of nights here, we've just looked at the Euro. Tonight, we're looking at the Euro, the GEFS, the UK Met, of course, which is a UK model, and the CMC. And we're plotting those all together. And let me show you how this sort of evolves. And so as we go through time, I want to also draw your attention, as I pull up the screen, to the legend here on the right-hand side. So in red, that's going to be the European model. That darker green, that's a CMC. The lighter green is a GFS or the GEFS. The UK Met represented in blue. And remember, we're not looking at deterministic runs here or a single model run, but we're rather looking at the ensembles plotted, and then the mean ensemble lines within them. And notice here, as we go through time, we're looking at the westward track of Erin and how it pertains to the east coast of the U.S. Look at how the ensemble members and the mean ensemble lines are tightly clustered together here. And I'm going to have to keep adjusting the screen. But notice how the mean ensemble means here are pretty tightly clustered together for all the models, the Euro, CMC, GEFS, UK Met, now through about Friday into Saturday. Where we start to see things divulge and diverge a little bit more is once we get beyond Saturday and also at the end of the cone from the National Hurricane Center. Now you're starting to see a little bit more spread taking place in those mean ensemble lines, and then also the ensemble members themselves. And the good news to all of this, even though confidence starts to decrease beyond the weekend into next week, is most of the mean ensemble lines, first of all of the ensemble mean lines here, are pretty far east of the east coast of the US. Now, you have a couple individual ensemble members, especially within the Euro, that take kind of a westward jog or more of a westward shift here. And you can see a couple of them that I've just circled. But still, there's not a single ensemble mean or ensemble member, at least in this case, that bring landfall into the east coast of the U.S. from Georgia up through South Carolina into North Carolina. And so that's the good news. As we look at all the different ensembles here from these different computer models, the mean line still shows a hard right-hand turn or curvature to the north out to sea. And even those individual ensemble members keep Erin at least at a comfortable distance out to sea here towards early next week. And I think if I was to plot this, this would look somewhere beyond Saturday, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, into the middle and end of next week. Uncertainty obviously increases, but even those individual ensemble members, for the most part, keep Erin a comfortable distance out to sea. Now, you may have seen on social media, there was one single run of the European model that came in earlier today, and that was the 12Z run that showed Erin kind of skirting right along, trying to take almost a Florence-like track, maybe a little further east, kind of hugging Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. That was one single computer model run. What we're looking at here is the ensemble members of each computer model run and the probabilities instead of just taking one single one. And notice how most of them, again, keep Erin out to sea. The furthest west at this time is the Euro, but still, the mean line itself from the Euro still makes that jog to the north before it impacts land. And even the individual ensemble members within the Euro here keep Erin out to sea and does not bring it in as a landfalling hurricane. Doesn't mean we're not going to have a pretty strong hurricane out there with major hurricane status still expected, but regardless, that's the way it looks tonight. And this is just kind of a different view looking at the Euro, and notice how once we get beyond this weekend, we're looking at Wednesday here, the consensus starts to kind of spread a little bit. You get a little more spread in the model data, and those ensembles aren't tightly wound or as close together as they were. So kind of the takeaway message here is, for right now, there's still high confidence that Erin will make a right-hand turn in a jot to the north before it impacts land during the middle of next week. However, it's still so far out, or too far out, to 100% conclude there won't be any impacts to the east coast of the U.S., but things are trending in a pretty positive direction with most of our ensemble members in all the different models confident still that Erin will stay out to sea. So that's kind of the latest there. I also want to bring you up to speed with, I'm just looking through some of your comments here, a new area of interest or an invest that we have out near the Yucatan Peninsula that I want to talk to you about. So that's what's happening with Erin. Again, tonight, National Hurricane Center is still calling for a major hurricane, but you can see within the cone from the Hurricane Center, they also, you can, represented by their cone here, show that northward jog or turn to the right before Erin potentially impacts the east coast of the U.S. Let's get back to the National Hurricane Center website here for just a second, because I want to show you the new area of interest that we have out in the Gulf, or rather near the Yucatan Peninsula. So here is obviously the 7-day graphic tropical outlook from the Hurricane Center. We just talked a little bit about Erin, and in just a few minutes, we'll talk a little more about Erin and some of the steering mechanisms regarding Tropical Storm Erin. But also want to draw your attention here to the left-hand side of your screen where I'm circling. That's our new invest or area of interest here from the Hurricane Center. This is Invest 98. It's a broad low pressure system that is right now over the Yucatan Peninsula. So it's having interaction with land, which is in the near term, at least, preventing development. And then through the next 48 hours, the probability of development here is low, only at 20%. And even through the next 7 days, a chance of development low as well, capped at about 20% right now. However, even though chances are low, doesn't mean we still aren't going to get anything out of it. And in fact, here is the way that it looks at the moment on the satellite imagery. So for some perspective here, looking at the Yucatan Peninsula, this is our new area of interest from the National Hurricane Center, the new invest that we're looking at. Obviously a highly disorganized, pretty torn apart system here with the center, if there is one trying to form over the Yucatan Peninsula, a lot of high mountainous terrain, which is preventing and stopping development here in the near term. But you can see some convective towers, some thunderstorm development, especially on the north and east side of this little tropical wave that is now interacting with land. The intensity guidance for Invest 98L actually has a few pieces of data trying to bring it up to tropical storm strength once we get beyond about 48 hours. And so, yeah, chances are low from the Hurricane Center at 20% for development as it moves into the Southwest Gulf. However, not zero, and there is still the off chance. The ship data here, by the way, which in the past historically does do pretty well, brings this little tropical wave up to tropical storm status once we get beyond 48 hours. Not a ton of other data available to us on this tropical wave in the Southwest Gulf, but here's kind of how things could play out. And this is just looking at the 12Z run of the Euro. And notice how we start to see that tropical wave kind of coming out of the mountainous terrain of the Yucatan as we get towards Friday. There it is. It's highly disorganized, but still can't rule out kind of a quick hitting tropical storm. If we were to get a tropical storm and landfall out of this one, more than likely, this would turn to the left here as it tries to make landfall in northern Mexico, perhaps bringing some rain across parts of far southern Texas. So, we're talking the Brownsville area as we get into Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Rainfall rates don't look particularly high, but still, it is peak hurricane season now, and so wanted to at least bring to your attention that we do have that new area of development. Again, the National Hurricane Center calling it 98L, broad low pressure system, tropical wave over the Yucatan Peninsula. It's obviously fighting off quite a bit in the way of interaction with land at the moment, but it will be one to kind of watch as we head into the next couple of days, especially if we get it to move into the Southwest Gulf here where water temperatures are pretty warm, which inevitably it will. And that's why a couple of pieces of data, the intensity data that we have, show it maybe reaching tropical storm strength, but still it should not be a huge, big deal across South Texas, but it will be one to watch over the next couple of days. So that's sort of what's happening with the tropics. I want to also show you tonight what's happening with severe weather, because there are some strong to severe thunderstorms across parts of the upper Midwest. In fact, check this out. We have a pretty healthy and organized looking MCS across northern Nebraska into southern South Dakota. We have a slight risk day today. This thunderstorm development was anticipated. A severe thunderstorm watch, it's in effect for northern Nebraska into southern South Dakota until 10 p.m. So that expires here in about, 2 minutes or so. That's Mountain Daylight Time. So in effect till 10 Mountain Time, that would be 11 Central. So another hour on this. I think there's still a pretty decent environment out ahead of this line of thunderstorms, especially here on the north side of the line, where you do have at least one severe thunderstorm warning that's in effect, and it has a considerable tag on it still. A severe thunderstorm warning now for, it looks like Tripp County in Nebraska for winds 60 to 70 miles per hour and some quarter-size hail. The heaviest rainfall now has just moved through the community of Winter, Nebraska, likely dealing with some winds within that 60 to 70 mile per hour range, tracking especially south of 44 Highway, getting towards Dallas and Gregory as this complex of showers and thunderstorms heads east-southeast. One thing I'll point out, especially on the south side and the west side, south and west side of this area of thunderstorms, you do have some outflow that is now coming out of these storms, which indicates perhaps there might be a little bit of weakening, but also that outflow may ignite a couple of isolated showers and thunderstorms out ahead of our main line. And over the next few hours, as this complex heads south and east, there is still some potential for severe weather, mainly in the form of gusty winds, about 50 to 60 miles per hour, obviously torrential amounts of rainfall and frequent lightning here coming into parts of north central Nebraska. And I would say the further north you head in Nebraska tonight, over the next couple of hours, a better chance you have of running into some severe weather sort of in that corridor there that I've just circled. And then obviously South Dakota here, where we have our one severe thunderstorm warning in effect from Gregory to Burke. Those are some spots, smaller communities that do run the risk of running into, again, some of the gusty winds with this line as it starts to work through. Looking now through some more of your comments here, I wanted to take a second to answer some of them. And I see kind of a few different comments about the tropics, and then also our storms that we have that are happening out tonight in the upper Midwest. I think I see mostly comments about the tropics. Pilot Pat says, this might be the most pre-coverage I've seen on a hurricane, and it isn't even hitting the U.S. Probably part of the reason why, and this happens every year. The first time that you get a system that's expected to make major hurricane status, it is a big deal, regardless of where it's going to head. And also, this system is tracking somewhat uncomfortably close to the east coast of the U.S., and there remains some uncertainty as to how it's going to play out. So everybody is sort of watching every little move when it comes to Tropical Storm Erin. But a large part of it is, yes, this is the first big storm system of the season in terms of a tropical threat that we've seen so far. Let's see. Dylan says, do you think Erin will hit South Carolina? Odds are Erin stays out to sea and makes a turn to the north before it impacts South Carolina, North Carolina, or the east coast of the U.S. Still tonight, even with some windshield wiper effect in the model data, which can be expected, there's still pretty high confidence that this won't be a direct hit to the east coast of the U.S. Here's a question. Where do they get the weird names like Invest 98? Seems like they're always in the 90s. So yeah, we're sort of just counting up here with, the invests are always funny because when I did television, people would kind of get hung up on that too. Well, what is an invest? And the best way to describe it for those who aren't in the meteorology community, I just kind of say it's a spot that we're maybe keeping a little closer eye on compared to, let's say, other thunderstorms in the tropical Atlantic or in the Gulf. And we're invested in it because there is some potential somewhere down the road for tropical development. Anthony says he lives near South Texas. We're watching the kind of disorganized tropical wave over the Yucatan that could bring some rain towards the end of the week, Friday and Saturday, maybe a quick hitting tropical storm to your south across Mexico. Obviously, we now have the Invest designation from the National Hurricane Center. Kenneth says Erin is going to be a Category 3, which, yes, that is true. Erin expected to be a Cat 3, which brings it up to major hurricane status. Here is Let's see if we have the 11 p.m. advisory in from the Hurricane Center. And here it is. This is brand new 11 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center. I'll pull the screen a little closer towards you so you can see. Winds still at 50 miles per hour, so haven't seen a big uptick in the winds. Moving to the west at about the same, 16 miles per hour. So no big changes between the 5 p.m. and the 11 p.m. advisory with the National Hurricane Center. And just at first glance, looking at the track, I don't see any big changes with the track either. We're starting to see, as the Hurricane Center kind of inches their track further west and north here with time, we're starting to see that jog to the north, that right-hand turn a little more defined in the National Hurricane Center's cone, which we've been expecting. There was kind of that weird fluke model run from the Euro this afternoon that brought landfall up to the Carolinas. That was a one-off. It looks like Hurricane Center still in line with most of the data that we have available tonight and showing a jog to the north, or a more of a defined right-hand turn here as we get towards Monday, which would keep Erin out to sea and less of a threat to the U.S. So you're looking at the fresh cone, the 11 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center on what is still Tropical Storm Erin out there in the central to eastern Atlantic, and no big changes in terms of intensity or speed. Let me refresh your comments as we get some new ones here. Anything for Wilmington, North Carolina? So right now, it looks like Erin will make a turn to the right and to the north before it impacts North Carolina. Confidence in that continues to increase. Most of the data that we have supports a turn to the north before any impacts to the Carolinas or direct impacts, but you can definitely expect some really high surf and swells and maybe a little bit of coastal erosion from this one. A question about, is San Juan safe this weekend in Puerto Rico? So that's a great question. Let's look here at the track from the Hurricane Center. Here's Puerto Rico. Notice the National Hurricane Center, the cone here representing where the center of the storm may go, does not include Puerto Rico, which is good news. However, it sort of is just going to depend what impacts, or the impacts that you see will depend on where the center of the low of Erin tracks, right? You still have a cone that is probably several hundred miles wide. And again, that cone represents where the center of the storm may go. If you get the center that tracks on the north end of the cone, it means less in the way of impacts for Puerto Rico. If you get a center that tracks maybe somewhere down here, it could mean some rain, some wind, maybe some flash flooding concerns across Puerto Rico, San Juan. But as of right now, it doesn't look like this is going to be a direct landfall for Puerto Rico, but some skirting impacts from Erin do look possible. The turn to the north is 5 days out. Yep, so there it is. There's the turn to the north. You can see it. And by the way, we talked about this last night, and I'm going to talk about it again tonight. Why we're expecting to see such kind of a sharp turn to the north here before Erin impacts the east coast of the U.S. And I want to get back to our super ensembles, the Euro, the GFS, the UK Met, and the CMC. And remember, the ensembles are different members of a group of each computer model, and they each throw out a different idea of what's going to happen based on the environmental conditions. And then those solid lines that you see are the mean of each of those ensemble members. And so as we look at the setup here through the next couple of days, all of the data is on board. Really tight consensus now through the next couple of days of a track westward here. And then once we get out about 2-3 days, and there's Puerto Rico for some reference, those ensemble members in each of the computer models start to become just a little more spread out. But confidence good, Puerto Rico, that a landfalling storm is not likely. But obviously you start running into different scenarios on if the center tracks on the north end here or on the south side of where the data currently is. And it's split. But the setup, regardless, and the steering mechanism here with Erin, and this is really common this time of year out in the tropical Atlantic, is we have a ridge of high pressure. We call this a Bermuda high. And again, I'll pull the screen a little closer in your direction so you can see. We have our Bermuda high. And then we also have another area of high pressure over the center to east coast of the U.S., let's just say, roughly. And that's sort of the setup that we have currently. High pressure has a clockwise flow. And so right now, we have a pretty strong Bermuda high. And so Erin is following right along the track of that Bermuda high. The clockwise flow is taking it out to the west. Heading into this weekend, the same system that is going to bring severe weather tomorrow across parts of the Dakotas into the upper Midwest, a trough is going to start to dig in. And so that trough will break down the strong ridge of high pressure. These tropical systems don't like staying by high pressure. They like to escape it if they can. And as our trough here across the Northeast starts to break down our ridge of high pressure, then inevitably what's going to happen is Erin will say, okay, that's an escape path. I don't have to stay tied to this high. And so it'll take that escape path. It'll stay away from the high across the center of the country. It'll stay away from the high, our Bermuda high. It'll take that escape path up to the north. And so now what we're really fine tuning, of course, is some of the exact details on the placement and the intensity of that trough of low pressure, because it will ultimately determine the strength, of course, of our high pressure, our Bermuda high pressure, which has been driving Erin. And so that's sort of just a quick kind of dive into the steering mechanisms and forces behind Erin here over the next couple of days at least. There's our strongest severe thunderstorms out across the Midwest tonight, South Dakota and into Nebraska. So Lord wants to know, what are the chances of it hitting Connecticut? Very low at this time. I would say low chances of this one directly impacting Connecticut. Looks like it's going to stay out to sea, but some big swells are definitely possible. So I want to quickly talk about what's happening tonight in terms of thunderstorms across the upper Midwest. A severe thunderstorm watch here until 11 o'clock for north central Nebraska into southern South Dakota. Pretty healthy, organized line of thunderstorms that is now straddling the South Dakota and North Dakota, the Nebraska and South Dakota border here. Although it does look like it's starting to weaken a little bit. Our line of thunderstorms is producing heavy amounts of rain, likely some gusty winds, but check out the outflow here, the trailing outflow on the south side of the line. It's moving away from our complex of thunderstorms. That's likely an indication that there is some weakening taking place, but still some strong to severe thunderstorms possible along the leading edge of this shield and line of thunderstorms over the next couple of hours. In fact, some new severe thunderstorm warnings just plotted now. One of those is still considerable, at least one, for northwestern Charles, as well as Gregory and southern Brule County until 11:15. This is for winds up to 70 miles per hour. And then the southernmost severe thunderstorm warning that we have, again, same line, but this one in northern Nebraska, particularly for Cherry, Rock, Brown, northwestern Holt, Kaipaja, western Boyd County until 11:15 is just for some winds to 60. So the southern edge and part of this complex of thunderstorms, this MCS, which is heading southeast, is less intense than the northern edge. Still think we could find some wind gusts up to, it looks like, 60 to 70 miles per hour, especially on the northern edge of this line. Coming in South Dakota, Dallas, Gregory, Burke, Carlock, and Fairfax, some of the smaller communities there in the path, and a considerable tag on it with some winds up to 70 miles per hour. Here's the velocity data, and you can see where we have some of those brighter red colors indicating likely where we're getting, I think, some of those winds. 65, maybe getting close to 70 miles per hour along the leading edge of our line of thunderstorms coming through Dallas, Gregory now. National Weather Service has this dropping to, it says east. To me, looks like the complex is moving southeast at about 40 miles per hour, so pretty good clip. Here are some approximate times of arrival of some spots along the path of this storm as we kind of draw it out here. getting in on some wind in Mills in 12 minutes, Dust in 42 minutes on the Nebraska side, Wilson Ranch in about 48 minutes. And then so far, again, as we kind of zoom out here, no extension on our severe thunderstorm watch deeper into eastern Nebraska or southeast South Dakota. I think by the time most of these storms get to, say, Sioux City, Sioux Falls, and Omaha, if they make it that far, they're going to be in a much weaker state overnight tonight. In fact, here's the data out on it from the 0Z HER, and it shows our line of thunderstorms persisting for another couple hours. I think now through the next hour or so, the severe weather threat will probably be the greatest with some isolated winds 60 to 70 miles per hour. And then as we get closer to sunrise tomorrow morning, that line fizzles out and dissipates. And then our focus for tomorrow will be on the potential of strong to severe thunderstorms developing across northern Minnesota, where we could have some winds possibly 60 to 70 miles per hour. A little greater threat, I think, for some hail if we get thunderstorms to develop here along a shortwave trough moving through and a trailing cold front into tomorrow afternoon, although the HER isn't particularly sold on the idea of widespread severe thunderstorms tomorrow across northern Minnesota. I think if anything, we might get 1 or 2 to 3 storm clusters that might give us a little bit of a bigger hail threat and also some stronger winds and, of course, heavy rain and frequent lightning. In all of that, tomorrow is a slight risk day for severe weather across the upper Midwest, across northern Minnesota. In fact, here is the outlook from the Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow. Again, slight risk day for Fargo up through Grand Forks area. Doesn't look like a super robust or major severe weather threat, but still, this is the shortwave and the low pressure system that we're watching that's going to develop here across the upper Midwest that'll play a role eventually in determining, of course, where Erin goes. So no rain for Omaha. Somebody asked, will that thunderstorm complex make it into Omaha? Does look like a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms possible in Omaha by tomorrow morning, early sunrise, but severe weather does not look like it's anticipated. All right, I think that'll wrap up our live stream for tonight. I want to thank everybody who has tuned in and joined. I'll be back tomorrow for another live stream about the latest with Erin and, of course, any severe weather that's developing across the upper Midwest. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. I do really appreciate it. We'll keep on doing these. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday night. We'll see you tomorrow night on Thursday night with another update. Stay safe. Have a good night.